Hello, Xad. How are you?
Good, how are you?
Good. So, why don't we talk about the remote jobs versus the in person jobs? Today, apparently, there are less and less remote jobs that are available compared to a couple years ago. And looks like lots of people still aiming for the remote jobs rather than applying for local in person or hybrid jobs, looks like, because everybody loves to work from home, right?
Yeah.
Compared to so you don't have to commit to the office. Plus you have much more freedom at your home. So but the problem is lots of companies, big corporates, they're pushing for in-person jobs, right? They're asking employees to be on site at least like 3 days a week, from what I heard. So what's your opinion on that? Can we talk about the remote versus the in-person jobs?
Yeah, imagine a winter, right? The middle of the winter is so cold. And then somehow the weather was so warm for that 1 week.
Hmm.
And then people like get used to it in a week. And then they're always expecting summer in the middle of the winter. It wouldn't make sense. It was just nice one good period. You took your kids to a picnic, fine, but it's gone. It's not normal. Like you have four seasons and every season has its own characteristics, right? So one of the problem with the remote job is we had a great time in the pandemic. People forgot that is not normal. Normal is going to office. You're supposed to go to office. That's what the entire human history revolved around working in a physical place,
Hmm.
and people were more productive. But because of the pandemic, the remote job became mandatory because there's no other way that you can work 6 feet distance, all the stuff like that. And we had pretty strong regime during the pandemic. So therefore, remote job was popular. But before that, for example, I started my tech career in 2011.
What was
Re-
the remote jobs
there-
like back in 2012?
Almost zero.
Almost zero.
If someone has a remote job, we were like, really? That's not possible, right?
Hmm.
It was so rare. Like I would say maybe out of 1,000 jobs, you have one remote possibility,
Yeah.
and you got to be the best of the best, top of the top, and you have that luxury to work from home. That time, I would say almost zero.
Mhm.
And then, pandemic hits and the companies they didn't know what to do. And then they realized, okay, there's lots of job we can actually do it remote. And then Zoom took off and everybody
Yes.
was working from home and became pretty popular.
Mhm.
In the beginning, I would say Mark Zuckerberg, Tim Cook, Jeff Bezos, all those people, they wanted to be nice. They're like, oh yeah, our company is remote friendly. You're going to be 100% remote. You don't have to come back to office, stuff like that. Because
Mhm.
at that time, they don't want their people to quit. Remember in the pandemic, the government injected trillions of dollars of free money
Yes, they
to the
printed lots
market,
of money.
right?
Uh-huh.
So when everybody has money, liquidity, they were just spending like crazy.
Mhm.
So now, obviously, you can go to like in-person events. So what people were doing, everybody was spending money online. They were
Mm.
educated online. They were streaming online. They were entertaining online. Like anything that related to tech took off at that times. So what happened is companies start hiring people like crazy because there was like trillions of dollars coming injected like a hormone. And then tech companies, they were like in the competition of hiring, I would say 2020. So what happened then? Then those big tech companies was like, oh yeah, we're remote friendly. We will not ask you to come back. Why? Because they wanted to keep their employees. And
Yes.
if you remember that time, Jeff Bezos woke up in the morning. He's like, okay, we're going to double the
Mhm.
tech workers' salary because of competition, because everybody wanted to hire whoever available in the market. Fear of missing out, FOMO. Companies were investing heavily on tech. So
True.
that was a hiring competition at that time because employees, they had competitive advantage or they have upper hand. You never have employee control the tech market or job market, never in the human history. But in the pandemic, employees were like, how do you call? They were spoiled. They were jumping, hopping from job to job. They were demanding working from home. They were demanding more money. They were demanding less hours. So that time, employees, I would say probably the only time in the history that they had advantage against employers. And that's why Jeff Bezos said, we're going to double the tech workers' salary. Can you imagine your salary is 200,000, you wake up is 400,000? So that is why I think that time people really got used to it. Companies were promoting.
Mhm.
So it came with the consequences. What is the consequences? First of all, I think one of the known consequences is there were many people, they had multiple jobs.
Mhm.
Now, our students, we know them in person. They have two, three jobs. Do you know anyone like that?
Yes, I have heard of couple people. They're doing multiple jobs since they work from home. somehow they are able to manage it. That they get one job offer from the West Coast side and another from the East Coast. As
Yeah,
long as there's no conflicts between their meetings, they are able to do multiple jobs.
absolutely,
Hmm.
absolutely. I know many people had multiple jobs. They set it up multiple screens,
Hmm.
and the only thing is they have to manage the time, Zoom meetings, right? And we know developers, coders, come on, let's be honest, right? Most of them, they don't work like 40 hours coding a week.
Yes, they will not work 8 hours a day,
How many hours do you think realistically coders are working a day?
about 3 hours,
Realistically, a productive, like sitting down, coding time,
or could be a lot more
start
less
time,
than that.
end time, not more than 3 hours, that
Yes.
I believe. So therefore, lots of people are getting multiple jobs. So when you moonlighting, which means you have multiple jobs, I don't think it's illegal, but the problem is if you are focused on three jobs, sometimes at least two jobs,
Hmm.
you do average job in both. You're average in both. And there's a
True.
performance issue in the companies,
Hmm.
and people were not happy with the performance. They were not dedicated. Indeed, you remember one of our employees was working from home,
Right.
and we were in the meeting, and all of a sudden he unmuted the wrong Zoom. Remember?
Yes.
And he was talking about totally
Some
different
different
project,
project. Yeah.
giving some update. He was in our meeting, and we were like, "What happened?" Then we realized he unmuted wrong Zoom.
Yes.
It was very, very popular at that time. So now you have employees making $500,000, $600,000 salary, cash, collecting from multiple companies, and they're not giving 100% on this, 100% on that, probably like 20, 20, 20% on three jobs. So that became another issue. Performance became issue, innovation became issue. There's lots of things that it requires innovation. Innovation requires, I don't think it comes from your basement, you work from home, it's like in your desk.
Hmm.
You have to communicate with your client, you have to communicate with your colleagues. So that's also issues, right? People were not solving enough problem when they're working from home. They're busy. We're not saying that they're not working hard. They're working so hard. I think lots of people were working hard. They're not abusing. But the amount of abuse was really, really highest in the history. So people got used to work from home. So I think because of that reason, probably because of moonlighting, people have
Hmm.
multiple jobs and companies are paying rent for free for their office.
Yes.
And then their innovation stuff, I guess, they're like their productivity stuff. Tech companies, especially knowledge workers, right? It's not, they have to create values. They have to come up with strategies. They have to create new products. That comes from true collaboration. And let's be honest, in person communication, in person working environment, in person collaboration is never the same. Don't tell me watching NBA or NFL from TV is the same watching in person. The feeling is completely different.
True.
So that's one thing, right? So companies were like, okay, there's so many reasons that we want to ask our employees to come back because they have multiple jobs. I think the trust was issue, the
Hmm.
performance was issue, and innovation, in-person culture, all those things were issues. So companies were slowly forcing them slowly to come back to office. So lots of employees they were resisting to come back to office. Now the companies are coming together. I think they're collaborating with each other because they're big all players. It's
Hmm.
good for all of them. If you are a big businessman, if I'm a big businessman and we're both hiring people, so sometimes our collaboration is going to give us upper hand in terms of against employees, right? As
Absolutely.
employers. I do believe big tech companies, though they're rival, at the same time they have some collaboration. So all of them start asking people to come back to office now. That's one thing. Another thing is Department of Government Efficiency, right? Elon Musk working with Donald Trump.
Hmm.
They found lots of issues for working from home. The government
Lots of
also,
corruptions
yeah,
also.
lots of corruption is happening. Like I do have my family friend working for one of the government agencies, and what she said is like literally people they sold their lands and house and car, moved overseas, showing up in a Zoom meeting a couple times, pretending they're working but doing nothing. There was so many employees collecting government paycheck
Yes,
by
so
doing
many
nothing.
federal employees, yeah,
Yeah, so now they're also forcing people to come to office.
which is
Now,
good.
in the beginning, just like I said, in the middle of the winter, you got like 1 or 2 weeks warm, like spring like weather, but it doesn't mean every December is going to be spring, bro.
True.
I think you should have to get used to it. Like in the pandemic, there were periods of time in the human history, working from home, remote was so popular. Now the companies, the governments, the employers, they're forcing people to go back to office. Now there's a couple things, right? There's some companies, they still see values on remote job because
Hmm.
they don't have to pay rent. Employees can work from anywhere.
Hmm.
So they're still doing some remote work. But most companies, they were trying to, I think, trying to find middle ground. which is started. They cannot say 5 days in office because Elon Musk, Doge can say it. It's government, the taxpayers' money, right? It's your and
Yes.
my money, right? So they're like, okay, if you don't come to office 5 days a week, you're fired as a government employees. I think taxpayers' money, we have to be a little bit more sensitive.
True.
So if they ask 5 days a week, they should go 5 days a week. So government employees aside, for the private institutional employers, they're trying to say 3 days a week, two
Mhm.
days a week in person. I think that's going
Trying
to
to
be the
implement
norm.
the hybrid structure. Yeah.
Yeah, hybrid is going to be the norm, but I think in 2026, the company is going to start forcing people to come to office.
True.
They're going to start with hybrid though. People need to
Mhm.
get used to it. So they're asking people to come to office hybrid. This can drastically decrease moonlighting, having multiple jobs. It can drastically decrease. And also, it increases employees' loyalty and their focus, their collaboration, establishing company culture. Culture is one of the most important things that you can't really build company culture over Zoom. People need to come together. People need to collaborate, need to have teamwork. Companies are forcing right now at least hybrid. If you get a hybrid job, I mean, you're lucky today. Before in 2011, 12, working from home for half day was a big thing. Friday
Mhm.
afternoon, if we could go home and work from home, we were so happy.
Mhm.
Now we're talking about 2, 3 days a week. You work from home, it's still an amazing deal. I'm not saying that you should drive and commute every day, spend gas, all those things. Who wants to do that? But if you want to be realistic, if you want to be realistic, companies are going to ask employees to come to office. Best case scenario, you're going to have hybrid jobs. So the worst case scenario is going to be full-time in-person jobs. So now companies are going to hire in hybrid. So when you're in the job market, I think people need to understand they should have strategy. Have you ever used Waze? Waze is a GPS. Waze has a very simple algorithm, very interesting. So let's say 66 is traffic, and Waze will know from all the users. So they report traffic, or they can see the speed of the vehicle,
Mhm.
how fast is the iPhone moving or Android phone is moving.
Mhm.
So they would predict the traffic in certain roads. If they see congestion in 66, so what they're doing, they're routing Waze user to 29, because if everybody is on 66, obviously it's going to be traffic. So
Yes.
I'm going to find alternative roads so you can get the destination faster or
Faster.
better.
Uh-huh.
That is Waze. I think in this case, if you are in the market looking for a job, Waze strategy is pretty simple, and I think it's going to work. Go to Dice, go to Indeed, go to LinkedIn.com. If there's 100 remote job, probably every single person in the market is applying to that remote job because
Mhm.
everyone wants to work remote.
Yeah, because they don't want to commute to
Yeah.
their workplace, right?
So in one side, you have a one remote job, have like 3,000 applications.
Mhm.
In one side, I don't know, in Wisconsin, in Arkansas, I don't know, like in some city, and there's an in-person job, probably you have 100 applications. Do you want to be one out of 3,000? And do you want to be one out of 100 or 50 people? So if you're willing to get a job in person,
Mhm.
you have higher chance to get a job. Remember, we're not in the environment that interest rate is zero. Government is pumping money. The
Mhm.
tech market is like growing faster than ever. We're in the environment that we still have high interest and
Mhm.
we have trade wars, right? We have
Yes.
AI, we have geopolitical issues. In this kind of circumstances, I think people should be realistic. If you have a job today, that's a good job. If an employee pays you, you can use your skill sets that you've learned inside EO and can get a job. That is a good one. So when everybody wants to become remote, you have way higher chance to get a job in person or hybrid. So I would strongly encourage our students in the market apply for hybrid and in-person job specifically. High likely they're going to get a job.
And also be willing to relocate as well, right?
Back then, relocation was very normal thing. Let's say you're in Wisconsin. I'm applying for Virginia, right?
Mhm.
They may not look at you as very viable option because first of all, you might ask for relocation fee.
Yes.
Second, you might say yes, and meanwhile, you might find different job. You're not the first person trying to be smart. Maybe they have been there, done that. Multiple people they didn't show up after getting the relocation fee, or they didn't show up after working for 2 months stuff like that. So likely they will try to find local person. So if you are the person not in a metropolitan area, you're not in area, you're not in Los Angeles area, you're not in New York, you're not in Chicago, you're not in Florida, for example, Miami, you're
Mhm.
not in Washington D.C. area, maybe it's a good thing for you because those people, let's say in Minnesota, right? Or some areas You have specific tech talent in there. So it's likely that if you're local, there are a higher tendency they might want to hire you.
Mhm.
If you're in those areas, you're lucky if you're not in the metropolitan area. But if you're in the metropolitan area, you found a job in some other places, I would say if you're so good and if you're convincing, companies might still give you offer because a good employee can create so much value for the companies.
Mhm.
So if you ask for a relocation fee, let's say $10,000, whatever, I don't know how much, but I'm just coming up with the number. It might be reasonable for companies to pay you a relocation fee to move, right? Sometimes, guess what? Newer environment, it's new journey, a new experience. And sometimes, like, what are you going to do in New York, for example, right? The rent is so expensive. Like a two-bedroom apartment price in New York, in Texas, in some other areas, you can rent a single house, right? You can buy a house.
Mhm.
So I do think it's also opportunity to move to different areas to just get a job for relocation. So don't fall in love for the city that you came. Let's say, especially we have lots of students that are immigrants. If they came to New York, they're in love with New York and they don't consider other places. So that's also a tendency. Explore. America is bigger than Europe, I feel, I believe.
Oh,
So yeah,
absolutely.
every state is a country. Go explore. Maybe your life is better elsewhere instead of paying, I don't know, 60% of your income in rent. It doesn't make sense to me. So open to relocate.
What if someone really wants to get a remote job? What do you think the future is like for the remote jobs in couple years? Do you think the remote jobs has chance to return?
No,
Maybe.
you're going to still have remote job, right?
Yeah.
For example, let's say you're in America. You are STAT or test automation engineer or developer. Your salary is going to be around $100,000, $120,000, right?
Mhm.
Okay. Mukhtar, you tell me. If someone is working from Wisconsin, I pay the guy $120,000. I never see the guy. He's online. He's joining from the Zoom. What is preventing me to hire somebody in other places of the world where $20,000 a year is a lot of money? And assume that AI is going to make their communication much easier.
Mhm.
And assume they have pretty decent English. And assume that they're pretty smart. So now, what is preventing me to hire somebody at 20% cost? Somebody working from Chennai, India, somebody working from some Eastern Europe countries,
Mhm.
somebody working from Turkey, versus somebody working in Wisconsin that I don't see,
Mhm.
both of them online, both of them working as hard as possible, both of them are empowered by AI.
Yes.
So you give me a reason why would I pay this guy in Wisconsin $100,000 instead of $20,000 in other places of the world?
Maybe because of the politics regulations.
No, I mean
No.
there's no
Oh, you
regulation for
can
you cannot.
always hire people from the offshore, right?
Yeah,
Yep.
so the
That
thing
also
is
makes
this:
sense.
if you become 100% online, like I just better at 20% cost hire someone in Eastern Europe. I mean, Ukraine before war, they were like a tech hub. There was
Mhm.
lots of developers working from Europe, right?
Yes.
So there's no reason for a company to pay you $100,000 in the US. They could find somebody in 20% cost.
True.
They want you to come to office so you guys can create product together. That's a different thing. There might be stuff that you know in America as a context of American culture, American consumer, being there physically solving problem. All those things are different. If companies paying for that kind of money, they might ask you to come to office. So if you purely online remote worker, you are competing against every single remote worker around the world because internet has no distance. It doesn't matter you're in Germany or Wisconsin or Australia or New Zealand or Japan. You're competing with everyone because if anyone speaks English, have tech talent, and have internet access, now everybody's competing for the job. So that's
Absolutely.
one thing. The second thing is this: yes, it's possible to have remote job,
Mhm. If there
but
is another pandemic.
no. If I ask Habib,
Yes.
hey Habib, do you think I can become a UFC champion? He's gonna say, yeah, of course there's possibility. Come to Dagestan. I will show you, right? Probably I will fail. You have to be the best of the best. You have to wake up in the 4 in the morning and work out every single day to be a champion. So it's easier to find a job, but when you put very, very high standard, I want to be able to dictate my job description, what company I work for, and how much I get paid. You got to be really, really, really good.
Yeah, you have to be the top 1%
Yeah,
to be
if you
able
top
to do that.
1%, you can find a job remote anywhere in world. I
Mhm.
mean, go to Bahamas, work from there. But the thing is how realistic it is for everyday individuals. So just be realistic. One more thing I want to talk about is this. We have lots of students. They're new in the market. It's going to be their first tech job. Now, put in the context, you went to a college degree. You went to a college that you study computer science.
Mhm.
How many years did you study?
Bachelor's was 4 years, and master's was 1.5 years.
Um,
Total
um,
5.5 years,
fi-
almost 6 years. Yeah.
Almost 6 years, right? 6 years you study in a college, you
Hmm.
get bachelor's degrees in computer science and master's in cybersecurity, something like that.
Hmm.
Do you feel comfortable to share how much money you pay?
Yes, I think it's about 100K.
Let's say in
Yeah,
6 years,
tuition and stuff.
you pay $100,000 in tuition.
Hmm.
This is not included with your life expenses.
Yes.
Okay. If you add your life expenses, it's going to be lots of money. So to make it easier, let's just round it up for $100,000. 6 years' time, $100,000. Now, you also graduated from batch 10. Is that correct?
Yes.
So,
Saidio batch 10.
side your batch 10, right? Can you be brutally honest here? Where did you learn all the hands-on stuff? Like more in your college or more
I would say from Saidio. In college, most of the classes, most of the credit hours were from the general education, which has nothing to do with your major classes. And even in your major classes, I mean, you learn just to pass the exam. That's how you study in college. Study to pass the exam. You need to be good at multiple choices.
That's the biggest problem with the education
Yeah, no hands-on
is the entire
experience.
education is preparing you to pass the exam.
Yes,
Once you finish the college, there's nothing based on exam. You want to
true,
propose a marriage? They're not going to say, hey, if you pass marriage, I'll say yes. Right? You have to convince, right? You have to
true,
persuade. And apply for a job. They're not going to say, oh, if you pass the exam, we'll hire you, right?
true.
Starting a business, nothing is exam based. So that's the problem. Imagine people go to college, they spend hundreds of thousands of dollars, they spend 4 years and they learn very little. Okay.
True.
Now, change your perspective. If you are first time getting into tech market, if this is going to be your first tech job, there's no tech job for like 30, $40,000. I would say for the skill set that they're learning inside you,
Mm,
at least they're making 80, 90, $100,000. Let's say make it easier. Let's round it down to $80,000
mm,
minimum. Can you imagine that companies are willing to pay you $80,000 a year to give you opportunity to practice everything that you have learned in real life? You're going to learn software development,
mm.
project management, communication, budgeting, so many things when you go to a company. 1 year of working for a tech company, tech project, in terms of the competency, level of experience, level of knowledge and wisdom that you're going to gain in the real world, it's going to be far exceeding 4 year college education. Do you
Absolutely.
agree with me?
I agree. Yes.
Unless I don't know MIT, I don't know Harvard, I can't speak for the big rich places, but I'm talking about
Regular colleges.
in general. 1 year job experience is far superior than 4 year degree.
True.
You go to college, you pay $100,000 and you learn very little. You're okay with that. You're not okay for the first company that is willing to give you a shot, pay you $80,000 to teach you everything that company does. What is wrong with us? Does it make sense? Now it
Yes.
clicks, right? So look at your first job, look at your first tech job as
Mm,
a university,
yes.
as a place that will teach you everything about business and software development and the communication and the strategies and the technologies, all the stuff, and to pay you $80,000. When you look at that way, it's much easier decision. It's very easy value proposition. Just go get the job. If you get that job $80,000 in
Mm,
prior, you don't have any experience in tech. Maybe you had experience in sales, in retail, as a teacher, whatever, but you don't have a tech experience. Now, without that experience, just for the knowledge that you have, company is paying you $80,000, $90,000. Guess what? Now, can you imagine after working for a year how much you will increase your capability and your competency? Don't you think that your second job, the third job is going to be much easier for you to have like a cherry pick? Oh, I want this job. I want that industry. I don't want to work for finance. I want to work for healthcare. I don't want to work in Fairfax. I want to work in Wisconsin. I mean, then you will have luxury to say that. But if you look at your first job as a university that will pay you a lot of money to learn, much easier. I would strongly recommend our first time job seekers to be open to find a job in
mm,
person because all the competent people, when I say competent, means that they have years of experience. I
mhm.
mean, they're still a little bit cocky, because they have option. When you have option, you always want to have the better option. So they can cherry pick. So every experienced individual, they're attacking remote jobs. So the in-person job is the place that you have very, very high chance to get a job offer.
Sure.
Go apply, get the job. After your first job, everything else is going to be much, much, much easier. Because in your first job, you're earning and you're learning. That's it.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys. I hope our students will benefit from this and just to be open for in person jobs and specifically target in person jobs.
Yes, I hope.
Yeah. Okay. Thank
Thank
you,
you.
bro.
Thanks.